tale of two speeches. Carney speaks of ruptures while Trump talks about Greenland and Canada. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
U.S. President Donald Trump spoke for more than an hour today at the World Economic Forum to a room full of the rich and powerful, many wondering what he would say about Greenland. About halfway through the speech, Trump got to the point. As he has done for weeks, he made his case again for U.S. control of Greenland.
We need it for strategic national security and international security. This enormous unsecured island is actually part of North America, on the northern frontier of the Western Hemisphere. That's our territory. It is therefore a core national security interest of the United States of America. And in fact, it's been our policy for hundreds of years to prevent outside threats from entering our hemisphere, and we've done it very successfully. We've never been stronger than we are now. That's why American presidents have sought to purchase Greenland for nearly 2 centuries. You know, for 2 centuries they've been trying to do it. They should have kept it after World War II, but they had a different president. That's all right. People think differently. Much more necessary now than it was at that time, however.
Trump said he wants to buy Greenland, that's his goal. He said he doesn't want to use force. World leaders have warned that a U.S. move on Greenland could tear NATO apart. But that doesn't seem to concern Trump.
So what we have gotten out of NATO is nothing except to protect Europe from the Soviet Union and now Russia. I mean, we've helped them for so many years. We've never gotten anything, except we pay for NATO. And we paid for many years until I came along. We paid for, in my opinion, 100% of NATO because they weren't paying their bills. And all we're asking for is to get Greenland, including right title and ownership, because you need the ownership to defend it. You can't defend it on a lease. Number one, legally it's not defensible that way, totally. And number two, psychologically, who the hell wants to defend a license agreement or a lease, which is a large piece of ice in the middle of the ocean where if there is a war, much of the action will take place on that piece of ice. Think of it. Those missiles would be flying right over the center of that piece of ice. All we want from Denmark for national and international security and to keep our very energetic and dangerous potential enemies at bay is this land on which we're going to build the greatest golden dome ever built.
Trump also took another shot at Canada and had something to say about Prime Minister Carney's speech yesterday in Davos.
We're going to build the greatest golden dome ever built. We're building a golden dome that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
Mark is, of course, Prime Minister Mark Carney, who spoke at the World Economic Forum yesterday, a speech that garnered international attention as Carney outlined how he sees the world now and Canada's place in it.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, The architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat.
The Prime Minister would go on to say that given this rupture, countries like Canada, middle powers, must become more self-reliant and seek out new alliances.
A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty. They'll buy insurance, increase options, in order to rebuild sovereignty.
The speech is widely being viewed as a broadside to the Trump administration. Mr. Carney was even feted with a standing ovation at one point. He wrapped up his 20-minute speech saying people shouldn't shed a tear for the way things used to be.
We understand that this rupture calls for more than adaptation. It calls for honesty about the world as it is. We are taking the sign out of the window. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy.
Speaking on the Big Story podcast, John Wright, a well-known Canadian pollster and commentator, called the Carney speech one of the most important speeches by a Canadian prime minister in a very long time.
It probably will be one of the most monumental speeches that a Canadian prime minister has made in decades, if not a century. I think people will look at this and call it the Carney Doctrine. But I think it also will have a huge resonance among all the world leaders who looked at him having been such a formidable player on the world stage previously, having built those relationships with all of those people in the room and outside of that, plus all of the work he's been doing over the last many months, visiting and trying to arrange deals. He said from the outset of his prime ministership that he would be dealing in a much more pragmatic way. And I think he simply confirmed what his thinking is and codified it for the rest of the room.
That's the end of Prime Minister Carney's world travels for now. He's on his way back to Ottawa, with the House of Commons set to resume sitting on Monday. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow
Returns on News Radio.
The holiday break is almost over for MPs. Members of Parliament will be back in Ottawa soon, with the House of Commons set to resume sitting on January 26th. That's next Monday, and our next guest is hoping to advance legislation on addiction and drug crime and would like to see more done to promote her region as one of Canada's leading centers for high tech. Kelly DeRidder is the Conservative MP for the riding of Kitchener Centre. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Very appreciative to be here, so thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. You looking forward to getting back to the House?
I am, yes. I'm very much looking forward to getting back to Ottawa and getting back in the House.
That's good. Be lots of snow and cold when you get there, just as a warning. If you haven't been in the nation's capital in a while, bring your skates. The canal might be open. You have made, though, combating drug addiction and getting tougher on drug crime, that's a real focus for you, and I want to know what's behind that.
So it's actually the reason why I ran. Why I put my name forward is because of the drug crisis that we see all across our country. I don't think that there's one riding in Canada that hasn't been impacted on some level of what we're seeing. I know that it's affecting my downtown core in Kitchener, and that our businesses are struggling, and there's a lot of impact that's happening with this drug crisis. But beyond that, I think that we need to focus on abstinence-based rehabilitation, and that's why I brought forward my own private members bill that at least starts the conversation around that. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to share with what my private member bill does.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What's in there?
Oh, good.
What are you proposing?
Yeah. So what it is that it introduces rehabilitation into incarceration. This is what I can do on a federal level right now. And so I'll just walk you through it. A judge can prescribe rehabilitation, whatever that might look like for an inmate. It could be education, mental health, actual drug rehabilitation. And then it's up to the inmate to choose whether or not to take that rehabilitation stream. If they do, then it's up to the federal government to provide the supports required for them to complete the rehabilitation that's been prescribed. And then at the end of the sentence, a parole can look at whether or not the inmate chose to take the rehabilitation path. And so I'm all about breaking cycles. We need to break cycles and help people heal from addiction and what's causing addiction. And I think this is a positive step forward in the fact that you have to be responsible for your actions, and you've been incarcerated because of that, but we're going to provide an opportunity for someone to potentially break the cycle in their life and lead a beautiful life on the other side of addiction or whatever's causing trauma to make the decisions they're making today.
What about the people who are profiting from the crisis? Drug dealers, drug traffickers.
And
what about those people? How do you get tough on those people? What do you think?
Yeah, so there is a component actually in my private members bill that anybody trafficking fentanyl, it's going to be an aggravated factor, so that there's harsher sentencing we want to punish, the people that are profiting off of this, and we want to heal the people that are kept in the clutches of addiction right now. That's what I want to do, and that's what my private members bill does.
Very good. It's entering second reading, so we'll be following that. If you'll just hang on the line, I do have some questions for you surrounding IT and high technology, because Kitchener-Waterloo, long-standing reputation of being one of the hubs in the country for innovation. So I'd like to ask you a few questions about that, Kelly DeRidder, if you'll just hang on the line with us here. Kelly DeRidder is with us today. From Kitchener Centre, Conservative MP. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
We're speaking with Conservative MP Kelly DeRidder today, the MP for Kitchener Centre, and thanks again for sticking with us, Kelly DeRidder. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the Waterloo area, Kitchener-Waterloo area. It's always enjoyed a reputation of being a hub for technology of companies like BlackBerry and OpenText, but also many multinational high-tech companies have operations there. There's also the University of Waterloo, which has always been a pipeline for talent. But you think more could be done? What more could be done to promote your part of the country as a hub for high tech?
Yeah, so, I ran because of the drug crisis, but then there's this other side of me, which is a techie at heart. I graduated from Conestoga College, our local college, with mechanical engineering, and I specialized in robotics and automation. And so this piece of myself is also infiltrated into Kitchener Centre, and I've coined Kitchener Centre as Canada's innovation capital, because we are what is coming out of, Waterloo region as a whole, but Kitchener Centre is the heartbeat. It's just really incredible innovation. And so we need to be known more on a national and an international stage for exactly what we're doing in Kitchener Centre. We are amazing at educating and incubating, but we are not the best at retaining. And so we're not seeing the economic impact as much as we should be for the retention of the innovation that's happening in our region. And so I want to create an environment where investment wants to come to Kitchener and stay in Kitchener, that our graduates from our amazing USW, yes, are staying in our riding because this is where the innovation is made. This is where it's happening. And I want to support Kitchener Centre and all the amazing things that we're doing in our innovation field, med tech, advanced tech, quantum, AI, all of it. And it's all happening in our region. And so I'm starting a campaign, actually, Canada's Innovation Capital, and we have a website that we'll be launching, and we're launching it at convention, and then we will go from there onto the national stage.
Okay. Well, I can't have an MP on these days, especially a Conservative MP, and not ask you about, the hot gossip of political Ottawa, because it's been all over the news. So I have to ask you about that. The convention is coming up in Calgary, the Conservative Party convention, and the leadership review for the party leader, Pierre Poilievre. Do you support Pierre Poilievre?
I do, and I fully expect Pierre to remain our leader, and I'm looking forward to returning to Ottawa as a united caucus, a government in waiting, ready to, lead the opposition and move to go forward together as a team.
Okay. Have you been approached across the floor? I'm sure the Liberals would love to have you as part of Team Liberal, a nice urban conservative riding that they probably think should be part of the Liberal fold there in Kitchener Centre. Have you been approached? Have they offered you anything? Have they tried to lure you away?
I have not personally been approached by the Liberal Party. If I were to be, the answer is unequivocally no.
Okay. What do you think about the efforts? Because we know they've reached out to your caucus colleagues. They've reached out to New Democrats. What do you think about their attempts to secure a majority government through floor crossing?
I think it's a very undemocratic way to try to get a majority. And I think that, our floor crossers that have happened are, found some opportunistic reasons to do so. And that's all I really have to say about that.
Okay. Thank you so much for the time today. All the best in the legislative year ahead. I'm sure you'll be busy. You'll have a lot on your plate.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me. Truly, thank you very much, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye. Yeah, that's Kelly DeRidder, the Conservative MP for the riding of Kitchener Centre. And if you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, now you know with Rob Snow, we have a mobile app that will help you hear our show when you want to. You can listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr. All kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. You can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr. Now you know with Rob Snow is also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Our Newsday panel is coming up with a focus on two speeches. Trump today, Carney yesterday. That's just ahead here on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
It's time for our Wednesday Newsday political panel. Today it is the professors, Lori Turnbull with Dalhousie University in Halifax. Professor, welcome back. Good to hear from you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Duane Bratt with Mount Royal University in Calgary. Professor, welcome back to you as well.
Yeah, good morning.
We have much to discuss. I would like to begin with the newest news, because it's big news. When U.S. President Donald Trump talks about Canada, it makes waves in this country. It makes news in this country. And he spoke for a long time today in Davos, more than an hour and a half. And he referenced the Prime Minister, Mark Carney's speech yesterday. So let's listen to what Donald Trump said about Canada and Mark Carney.
We're going to build the greatest golden dome ever built. We're building a golden dome that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. Professor Turnbull, what do you make of such comments from the American president?
Well, he's still calling him prime minister, not governor, so that's pretty good. I think this is probably going to happen on some level. I think that Donald Trump was going to respond. I thought it was really interesting that the prime minister went through the whole speech yesterday and did not mention Donald Trump once. And so I think even though he wasn't singled out by name, I think the president probably knows that the speech is about him. And he's reacting in a way that's kind of, it seems to me as there's a personal aspect to it. He's calling him Mark. But I mean, this was going to happen. I don't think it necessarily means anything, on its own.
Professor Bratt, what do you think?
Well, if you watch the rest of Trump's speech, Denmark isn't grateful to the United States, and France isn't grateful to the United States, and the other Europeans aren't grateful to the United States. So while Canadians may focus on his comments towards Mark Carney and Canada not being grateful, Trump is basically saying nobody is grateful to the United States. And when you put that into the context of the beginning of the speech, which was how wonderful the U.S. is only in the last year, and that all Americans need to be grateful to Donald Trump. I mean, there's a consistency there. But Mark Carney had to have known that Trump would not be happy with his speech. And I think that was part of his calculation, and he did it anyway.
Okay, well, let's turn our attention to Prime Minister Carney's speech yesterday in Davos, certainly getting a great deal of attention. Professor Bratt, for you, what makes it stand out?
Well, I think it is the most significant foreign policy speech that a Canadian prime minister has made since probably Louis Saint Laurent in 1947 in his Gray Lecture. What makes Carney's a bit different is it was at an international forum. It was in front of international leaders. It was basically the Americans' closest ally saying that the old rules-based order is gone, and we need to come up with some other mechanism. It is remarkable to hear a Canadian prime minister almost repudiate multilateralism the way he did, but his point is that those institutions no longer work because the Americans no longer work. I think it's a speech that we're going to remember for a long period of time, much more than just the regular news cycle. So it was the content, it was where it took place, it was the timing, not just a year into the second Trump administration, but after reaching a trade deal in China.
Professor Turnbull, what makes this speech stand out for you?
I mean, I agree with Duane in terms of the timing, the significance. I think on multilateralism, it seems to me that the Prime Minister is saying, look, the way we have been doing things and the way we've said we're doing things, this isn't working. And he makes reference to the last 2 decades, indicating that there have been things that have really come apart over the last couple of decades that have made this arrangement no longer, like, we can't do this anymore. But I take his comments to mean that even prior to the last 2 decades, he would take issue with the whole approach to multilateralism as we've been doing it in terms of focus on great powers and then relationships of dependence, essentially between middle powers like Canada and then whatever great power they attach themselves to. And so I think what he's offering is actually a more complicated, complex form of multilateralism where it's more, there is more choice available to middle powers. And so I think we can see that against the backdrop of what he's doing now in terms of creating new trade relationships with China, entering into some kind of partnership with Qatar. I think he's trying to brace Canadians for what's to come. I think he's putting forward a justification for his values-based realism approach to trade. And he's saying we're not going to be able to get people to change the way they do things. We can't change we can't change the way China does things, but we can decide when it's in our interest that we're going to partner with them on certain things. And so I think it is going to be an interesting time especially when the kind of excitement about his speech dials down, because, I mean, the guy's a statesman. This puts him on a different level, I think, in terms of like when you're looking at, lots of impressive Canadian prime ministers. But the way he delivered that speech was inspiring. And he is now, he's got like a kind of hero status at the international table. And so he's going to bring that back with him to the House of Commons next week. And he's going to have to break this down in ways that Canadians can see how exactly is this going to make life better for us.
Yeah, okay. We'll pick up on this when we return with our professors here on the Wednesday Newsday political panel. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
It's our Wednesday Newsday political panel with Professors Laurie Turnbull from Dalhousie University and Duane Bratt from Mount Royal University. The prevailing narrative is that the Prime Minister's speech yesterday in Davos was directed at the Trump administration. There's no doubt about that, but let me read you a little excerpt from it. More recently, great powers began using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. Professor Turnbull, couldn't much of that apply to China or even Russia for that matter? Not just the United States?
Well, that's it. And I think that might be a place where people will, again, after the excitement of the speech wears off, people are going to start to point out that we are being critical of the United States, very critical of the United States. And as you say, he didn't mention Trump by name, he did, but clearly this was a commentary on Canada's relationship with the U.S. And so if we're taking this position with respect to the United States, but yet, we're maybe embracing a deeper relationship with China, does that put us in a bit of a weird spot? But also, I think it also kind of speaks to where Donald Trump's thinking is in terms of the hemispheric situation. He's trying to make the argument that, the U.S. is to be the hegemon in the Western Hemisphere. The China, Russia kind of do the same in their own spaces, and that's where for him the operational concept of sovereignty actually lives, as opposed to with sovereign countries. And I think the Prime Minister is just taking issue with that whole thing.
Okay. What do you think, Professor Bratt? A lot of, for example, tariffs as leverage. Well, the Chinese were using tariffs as leverage. That's why their EVs are going to soon be for sale in this country, because they were tariffing all kinds of, Canadian goods.
Oh, yeah, it applies to China. It does not apply to Russia because Russia is not very strong economically, and Canada in particular has very few economic ties with Russia. But yeah, it is about China, and it is about the United States. But if you think about Carney's trip to Beijing, I don't think that would have occurred if it were not for Donald Trump. And if you just think about the relationship that Canada has with China, it is tough to divorce the Canada-American relationship. So why did we put EV tariffs on? It was in response to a request by the Biden administration. Okay, so we were working with the Americans, and we did not get much credit or gratefulness, as it were, from the Trump administration for doing that. If you look at the initial tariffs on canola back in 2019 and pork and the seizure of the two Michaels, it was because we arrested Ming Wanzhou from Huawei. Why did we arrest her? On an extradition request by the United States, by the Trump administration. And what did that get us? Grief with the Chinese. So this idea of countries using economic levers for coercion, that is true, and it applies to both the United States and China. But there's a reason that Canada is embracing China now, and it's because of the response of the United States. And we're not the only ones looking at China as a partner.
Okay, just one more thing on the speech, and then we can move along. Well, not just the speech, but the China deal, and now the speech, the Qatar deal, and the speech. Mr. Carney's been asked about this. does China really share our interests? Why are we doing business with Qatar given its human rights record? And the Prime Minister, this was referenced yesterday in his speech, pragmatic realism. We must work with the world the way it is, not the way we wish it to be. I'm just wondering your thoughts, Professor Bratt, how much of a departure that is for foreign policy for Canada.
I don't think it's that much of a departure, at least, but it is rhetorically. We've always worked with people whose values we do not share. We sold military equipment to Saudi Arabia. We continue to trade with China, even in the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square massacre. So rhetorically, it is a departure, but there's always been a gap between Canada's international rhetoric and what we actually do from a policy perspective.
Professor Turnbull, what do you think?
Absolutely. I agree entirely that it's not like we haven't been trading with China. It's not like every relationship we've had in terms of trade has been with countries that are of a like mind. But I think, rhetorically and also, from an actions and behavior perspective as well, if you take what the Prime Minister is proposing and what he's actually doing in the last week alone, and you compare that to the record of the Trudeau government, Justin Trudeau's government was not interested in trying to figure out how to go down a path of values-based pragmatism or realism, as the Prime Minister is calling it. They were interested in a progressive-based values trade relationships. They wanted to enter into the kinds of partnerships that would cause the other partner to change their values in a way that were more asymmetrical. In a way that were more symmetrical with Canada's. And I think, for a large extent, that wasn't successful. I think that's one of the reasons the Prime Minister is doing what he's doing now.
Okay, let me come back. MAGA and the Alberta Independence Movement. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
We're here with Professors Turnbull and Bratt. It's our Wednesday Newsday political panel. I've been reading a lot lately about the potential for MAGA to try and influence an Alberta independence referendum, perhaps in Quebec as well. Suggestions about grey money. You and I talked about that just a couple of weeks ago, Professor Turnbull. But also social media misinformation campaigns on social media. Even little green men, the suggestion has been made. Little green men could make their way into Alberta border towns. Professor Bratt, Professor? Let's start with Professor Bratt. He's out there. How likely are any of these scenarios, in your opinion, Professor Bratt? Grey money, misinformation campaigns in the Alberta referendum campaign.
Almost as close to 100% as I could imagine. When it's already happening. I mean, Alberta is the most pro-American province in Canada. This has gone back a long period of time. There's been patterns of migration, the role of the oil and gas sector, Mormon settlement in southern Alberta. All of those things have made us more American than other provinces. And there's a particular fixation, especially among the separatists, with Donald Trump and with red states. And this has flowed over on a whole host of issues. If you listen to Trump and Davos going on about windmills and renewable energy, you could easily hear Daniel Smith saying the same thing. Issues around wokeism in universities and transgender policies have all migrated. Issues around COVID all migrated. So it's already having an impact. And as we get closer to an expected referendum, you're going to see lots of social media accounts, lots of money flowing in different ways. And then what I expect is you're going to wake up one morning and there will be a Truth Social post by Donald Trump saying he does not want Canada as a 51st state. He wants Alberta. And so I think it's as likely as possible.
Okay. About 2 minutes or less there. Professor Turnbull, what do you think?
Oh, I agree. I think we know that there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of enmeshment between the conservative movement in Canada and that of the U.S. We could see the flow of money, for example, during the trucker convoy. I don't know if we'll ever get the full picture of that, but what I'm told is that would never have been able to even get off the ground if it weren't for the American money that came through to support it. And so I think there's definitely going to be an interest in being, and having the American side kind of be part of the conversation here. And I think there'll be conversations about like where we are in terms of foreign interference versus foreign influence and that sort of thing, like that to an extent. If people on the American side want to talk about being pro-Alberta separation, well, they're totally allowed to do that. They can voice a preference. Where it becomes difficult is when they start to get involved in it and they start to actually try to become part of the conversation in a way that tries to influence the outcome in ways that aren't transparent. And so I'm really interested to see if this all happens. If the referendum gets up and running, and this is something that Albertans contemplate and vote on, what is going to be the response in terms of trying to manage any kind of intervention and interference that's coming from the U.S.? I think it will be a really interesting case study, and especially at such a critical time for Canada when we're, again, for all the reasons the Prime Minister has outlined, we're trying to figure out what we're doing in this world.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you to the both of you. Great to hear from you. We'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Okay, will do.
Lori Turnbull from the Political Science Department at Dalhousie University in Halifax, and from Mount Royal University in Calgary, Professor Duane Bratt. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. Talkback is coming up next here on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today's topic, wealth inequality. Wealth inequality. The rich and the rest of us. Here's a question for you. Do you support higher taxes on the rich? Should the rich pay more tax? What would you say? What would you say? Do the rich pay their fair share, or should they pay more? Have your say. 1-833-668-2577. Because over the last few days, the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, has been the center of attention. It's been a parade of world leaders and business leaders who have flown to the Swiss Alps on their private jets, and they've gathered there to talk about and come up with solutions to the big problems in the world. And surely to goodness, one of those problems is wealth inequality. There have been many stories over the last few days about wealth inequality and growing calls for wealth taxes. There have been stories in the U.S. media about it and in the Canadian news media about it as well. What we want to know is whether or not you support such measures in order to make life more fair. So our phone lines are open right now, 1-833-668-2577. Give us a call. Let us know. Do you think the rich should pay higher taxes, special taxes, wealth taxes? Let's start with one of the stories that's been in the news over the last week or so on this topic. Every year, to coincide with the start of the World Economic Forum, Oxfam, the global humanitarian anti-poverty organization, releases a report about wealth inequality. And the Canadian report from Oxfam said wealth inequality is at crisis levels in this country. It's a crisis, according to Oxfam. Wealth inequality. The organization said it's getting worse, and Canada is part of a global trend. The rich are getting richer, and the rest of us are falling further and further behind. It says the wealth of Canadian billionaires has never been greater than it is today, and that the wealth of the 40 richest people in this country grew by a combined $95 billion in just a single year. $95 billion in just 1 year. Oxfam says these top 40 billionaires are worth a combined $453 billion, which is greater than the GDP of some countries like New Zealand and Finland or Chile. It says that the 1% in Canada have a collective wealth of $1.25 trillion, which is equal to the bottom 80% combined. To be in the 1% in this country means a net worth of $7 million or more. To be in the top 0.1% in the country means a net worth of about $36 million. And to be in the top 0.01% in the country means a net worth of about $170 million. It says on the other side, there's everyone else. And everyone else is struggling. The number of Canadians struggling to afford food has climbed by 25%, and 300,000 Canadians have experienced homelessness. And it says none of this is fair. And if these wealthy Canadians paid more tax or special taxes, Canadian society would be more fair, and there wouldn't be as much suffering. So Oxfam is calling for a wealth tax to, quote, more equitably redistribute resources. It says the ultra-rich are not paying their fair share, while everyone else is being asked to continue to make more and more sacrifices. It describes a wealth tax that would be progressive. It would kick in when someone hits a net worth of $10 million. $10 million. That's when wealth taxes would kick in Canada. And people worth between $10 and $49 million would pay a 1% wealth tax. If someone's net worth hits $50 million, then the wealth tax would go up to 2%. And at $100 million, it would be 3%. And Oxfam claims such a measure would raise more than $120 billion for government. Government could then use that money to fund social programs like building more affordable housing, improving health care, and providing more child care spaces. What do you think? What do you think of that idea? It's already happening. They point out in other countries like Norway, Spain, Switzerland, and it claims there's broad public support for wealth taxes. What we want to do today is put that to the test. So do you support a wealth tax? A wealth tax, taxing the rich more, something that would kick in at about $10 million or so, and we'll just go up from there. Oxfam also wants the government to crack down on the use of tax havens, claims wealthy Canadians have stashed more than $600 billion offshore, claims a lot of that money is held by super rich families, and that if it could somehow be reshored, the government would collect another $15 billion in taxes, which again could be used to make life better for everyone else. That's just one story that's been in the news in recent days. The rich in Canada are getting richer, while the rest of us just struggle to get by. So the rich should pay more because they're not paying their fair share. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. The rich and the rest of it. Do you support higher taxes or special taxes on wealthy Canadians? If you've never called before, just mention that to us. We'll make your call a priority, and let's talk about squeezing some more out of the rich. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Talking about wealth inequality today, the rich and the rest of us. Do you support higher taxes or special taxes on the wealthy in Canada? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Politico reported this week that around the world there is a growing backlash against the super wealthy. The news outlet says there are, quote, palpable signs of resentment over rising income inequality. And that is triggering renewed calls for things like wealth taxes that target the rich. And it offers up many examples. In France, there's a proposal that any household worth more than 100 million euros should have to pay a 2% wealth tax. In Norway, the Labour Party in Norway already had a wealth tax, and this year it's going to raise the wealth tax. Norway's wealth tax kicks in at roughly $230,000 Canadian. Are you rich with an income like that? $230,000 Canadian in annual income, $460,000 for a couple. And the wealth tax is between 0.85% to 1.1% of a person's annual income. The government, it says, takes that money and it helps fund things like municipal services and the social welfare system, healthcare, retirement benefits, childcare, various other social programs. In the UK, there's a Labour Party government, a left-wing government, and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, what we would call the Minister of Finance, has announced a mansion tax. And that would apply to any home in the UK valued at more than 2 million British pounds, which is about 3.7 million Canadian dollars. You'd have to pay a mansion tax. There's something like that in Toronto already. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow brought in a special land transfer tax for high-income homes that applies to all properties that sell for more than $3 million, and it only goes up from there. It goes much higher for very expensive homes in the Toronto area, like homes in the $20 million range. And in California, there's a push to have a ballot initiative for the midterm elections this November for a billionaire's tax, a one-time 5% tax on California's billionaires. And of course, the billionaires don't like it. Some of them are pulling up stakes, like the Google founders. They're leaving California, moving to places like Florida. In New York City, the mayor there, Zohran Mandani, has proposed raising taxes for all New Yorkers who make more than $1 million a year. And here in this country, the NDP has always called for higher taxes on the rich. That's still the case. The NDP has traditionally demanded a 1% tax on people with a net worth of $10 million and gradually increasing it from there. So it's a thing. I mean, it's a thing all over the place. Wealth taxes to fight wealth inequality, to improve wealth inequality. But do you support it? Do you think it would work? Would it do anything? Would it make life more fair? Would it improve our social programs? 1-833-668-2577. Danvir's up first today in Calgary. Hello, Danvir.
Hey, Rob.
Hi, Danvir. What do you think? Taxes on the rich, Danvir. What do you think?
I think a small amount doesn't hurt, but I'm not for the taxes totally. What I think is I bring this to lobbying as I've done before, right? So they lobby to the government, but the lobby for the people in general is the government. So the government needs to understand that and make those decisions in the interest of general public, not particular lobbies per se. So if that happens, the inequality doesn't expand more anyways. But a small tax doesn't hurt, but then that tax needs to go directly into priority areas like housing, like affordable housing or housing for homeless as a priority. So those things, targeted approach needs to be there.
Right. Okay. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of it, because this is a popular proposal. Okay. Yeah. From people who believe in this. Let's say you look at somebody you look at their real estate, their investments, their money in the bank, their art collection, and you work it all out versus their liabilities. It comes out they have a net worth of at least $10 million. Okay, $10 million. Danvir's worth $10 million. Congratulations, Danvir. You've done very well. But we're going to hit you with a 1% wealth tax because that will make life more fair. 1%, Danvir. Just give us 1%.
Okay.
Is that fair? Should that happen? Would you support that?
So that 1% actually goes out every year, right? So in 100 years, my wealth is gone if there's nothing increasing in there. So I don't know. So has to be
the government would take that money. We're going to, make fixes to healthcare. We build more affordable housing, provide more affordable childcare spaces. All we need from you, Danbury, you've got $10 million. All we want is 1%. Would you go for that?
Maybe it's reasonable, I think.
Maybe it's reasonable. Okay. Thank you. Off and running on Talkback today. Tax the rich. Our topic. Join the discussion. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Talking about wealth inequality today and taxes on the rich. Do you support higher taxes on the rich? Should the rich pay more? Are the rich paying their fair share? What would you say? Neil in Waterloo. Hello, Neil.
Yes, hello. Yeah, I actually support such a tax, but it has to be properly accounted for. So basically, if you're going to tax the rich, the 1%, 1.5%, it should go towards helping specifically homeless people. So it should be used for homeless shelters or homeless housing, for affordable housing. And it should be like all on account so that people can see it. It should be transparent. It shouldn't go into the general coffers of the government and where the income tax monies go and stuff like that. So it has to be separated from the rest of the taxes a given wealthy person pays or corporation or whatever. And it should also be imposed on corporations as well, not just rich people, but wealthy corporations that make beyond a certain amount of money per se. So that to me would be the only way it's fair, because most of the wealthy people are employers and they employ people and they have businesses and they didn't get rich just like that. And to take their money arbitrarily because they're wealthy is also not necessarily fair. That's basically what I have to say about it.
All right. Thank you for saying that, Neil. Neil wants, let's say on this person of $10 million, we're going to take 1% of their net worth. That's in theory, a tax of $100,000. It has to go into the Tax the Rich Fund, which has to be dedicated for improving social programs. Neil says, dedicated toward doing something about homelessness, for example. That's Neil's idea. To Lethbridge, Maureen. In Lethbridge. Hello, Maureen. Hi there, Maureen. What do you think?
Well, I would like to see the rich people pay the same amount of taxes as I do. I think they get a lot of perks that the normal population isn't able to apply for. So I think that we need to, have them pay the same amount as us.
What kind of perks do you think the rich are getting that
I think they have
everyday people like you and me don't qualify for?
A lot of things that they can take off, a lot of things that they can claim for. I'm not exactly sure because I'm not rich, but from what I've heard from other people, that they, if they have a special diet, or a special meeting that they have to go to, they're allowed to deduct that.
Okay, I'm not sure what write-offs there are or credits or whatever the case might be, but if there are, say, investment losses, can they carry those losses into future years to offset gains in future years? Those sorts of things.
In ours.
Right. One of the things that people have long complained about who follow this sort of thing, say, the income that you and I would make, say, on a T4 is taxed differently than, say, the CEO of a big company who gets paid in stock options. When cashes out the stock options, it's not taxed the same way as personal income is. So you would like to see maybe a change Something like that?
I think a change there. But just to tax somebody because they're wealthy, to me, doesn't seem fair. Because most people have worked hard for that money, and they've taken chances and done things like that for them to get there.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's one of the criticisms of a wealth tax. What's the incentive to try and become wealthy? Does it dissuade people from wanting to take risks or become entrepreneurs? That's one of the potential downsides of higher taxes on the rich. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you support wealth taxes? Higher taxes or special taxes on the wealthy in Canada. So, for example, in Canada, the wealthiest family in Canada is widely recognized to be the Thompson family. Maclean's on its most recent rich list said on any given day, because they're so wealthy, their net worth fluctuates by billions of dollars a day. It's anywhere between $90 and $98 billion. Family fortune, $90 to $98 billion. So let's just round it up for our purposes today. Let's say the Thompson family's worth $100 billion. $100 billion, okay? Under this proposal that they're trying to push forward in California and get it as a ballot initiative in the November midterms in the United States, they want a 5% tax on billionaire wealth. So for the Thompson family, a Canadian example, that's a tax on the Thompson family of like $50 million, one-time tax, $50 million. And you use that money, you put it into whatever. Fighting homelessness, more affordable housing, child care, retirement benefits, social welfare stipends. What do you think about something like that? 1-833-668-2577. Keith is in Nova Scotia. Hello, Keith. Thanks for calling, Keith. What do you think?
Good afternoon. Well, I'm not rich. I'll start off that way. I think taxing the rich, it would be a battle for the most part, to try to put a tax on them to give up some of their wealth. Some of them probably, again, like I said, I'm not rich, but maybe some of them have worked really hard for that money. And it would be hard to get them to pay a tax. And I'm thinking a lot of them aren't losing any sleep over people that are homeless, sleeping in tents. I doubt very much. Maybe some of them are, probably is. But for the most part, I don't think that's one of their things on their mind in general. So, yeah.
Well, why do you think it would be
to do
you
that?
Say, well, it would be hard to get them to pay it. Why do you say that?
Because they have money. They don't want to lose their money, Rob.
So you think that they'll move it around? They might leave Canada, something like that?
Why would you want to give up your money? If you were rich, say, and you had all kinds of money and whatnot, why would you want to give that up?
Right. They call it flight of capital. Flight of capital. You know, for example, in your part of the country, if people remember Casey Irving, you know that name, Casey Irving, who established Irving, right? The family empire, Irving.
Yeah.
They were going to bring in a new inheritance tax, a death tax in New Brunswick. And what did he do? You remember what he did?
No, I don't. Sorry.
Yeah.
Did he move
to Bermuda? He moved to Bermuda.
Okay, well, that kind of answered my question. Why would they want to give up their money?
Right. Okay. So yeah, they'll move. This is what's happening in California right now. It's all over the news. In California, they had this proposal for a billionaire's tax, one-time billionaire's tax of 5%. And the Google guys who had this model, don't be evil or something like that. What are they doing? They're leaving California and they're moving to Florida. buying homes in
Because they don't
Florida.
want to,
Okay, yeah.
because they
Flight
don't
of
want to give
capital.
up their money.
Don't want to give up their money. So you don't think it would work for that reason?
Why would they want to? Why would they want to give up their money?
Gotcha, Keith. Thank you. Let's go to Pat in Kitchener today. Hi, Pat. On wealth taxes, what are your thoughts? Let's soak the rich, eat the rich, tax the rich. They're not paying their fair share. Pat, what do you think?
Remember that the top 1% already pays close to 40% of taxes, so they're already paying a lot more than the average person. And so if we're talking about a wealth tax, you know, as a silver bullet for the deficit, historically, it's actually a failed policy. Most OECD countries in Europe, like Germany or Sweden or even France, 12 actually, in the past already tried this and scrapped it because it's a nightmare to implement. It's incredibly difficult to value things like private businesses, and it just encourages, like you said before, the wealthy to move their money somewhere else. And so I think what we need to do is focus on more stable solutions like spending reform instead. Elon Musk already paid the highest tax bill, if I'm not mistaken, in American history, $11 billion. Did it solve the budget in the U.S. or in California? No, it didn't. This wealth tax would just essentially, it wouldn't solve the problem. It would create more incentives for the government to keep on spending unwisely. That's
okay. Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Let's stop here. Be right back with more of your calls. Tax the rich. With higher taxes on their wealth or special taxes on their wealth. Mansion taxes, taxes on fancy boats, taxes on fancy cars. Do you support higher taxes on the wealthy? Wealth inequality. Fixing wealth inequality. Look at all the need out there. Maybe if the rich paid just a little bit more, life would be better for the rest of us. Or so the narrative goes. What do you think? This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Talking about wealth inequality and higher taxes on the rich. Again, I'm using this example because this is so often proposed by people who promote wealth taxes. Let's say someone's done very well in life and they have accumulated a net worth, you know, in real estate or financial investments. Maybe they've done well in business. They have a net worth of $10 million. The proposal so often touted is they should have to pay a 1% wealth tax. Say $100 grand. You give an extra $100,000. And we will use that. Well, the government will use that, and it will help fight poverty. It will help with the healthcare system or the public education system or the social welfare system. And it will be more fair. It will make society more fair. What do you think about that? Ian is in Cape Breton. Hello, Ian. What do you think, Ian?
Rob. Hi, Rob.
Ian.
Thanks for taking my call. And I think when you're explaining the extremes of like the richest family in Canada, that's one thing. But if you're looking at someone with 10 million and it's new money and he's worked bloody hard to get there, I mean, this is not me by any means, but, you know, a lot of people in the 10 millions, I think in the world of rich people, that's quite low. But you got 10 million, you've worked hard, you've sacrificed, you've built a big business, and now you're going to penalise them. I don't think that's fair on the younger millionaires or the lesser millionaires, because, you know, a lot of them rely on the money they've got invested to keep them going and growing. So you could be biting the hand that feeds you. The other thing I could think, which would be better than taxing them directly, would be the government to spend a little bit of time in closing loopholes, allowing all this offshore, tax-free, don't pay your tax stuff. That probably wouldn't drive them out where they are, because there'd be no getting away from it. I think that'd be a safer way to go, is to start closing loopholes. I should imagine they'd make a lot more money by doing that rather than directly penalising people at 10 million. If you're going to do that, then you're going to have to go a higher threshold than that, I think.
All right. Ian, thank you for your call from Cape Breton to southern Alberta. Crossing the country here to Linda. Linda, what do you think? Wealth taxes. Higher taxes on the rich.
I'm of the mind of the guy before. You close the loopholes and you take away some of their donations that they can write off. Because they will find, you put a new law out there or whatever, they've got people working for them. They'll find a way to get around it.
Right. Okay. But what about making life more fair? What about trying to improve people's lot in life? What about the rest of us? I mean, if you're $10 million, you are in the 1% in Canada. You're doing better than 99% of the rest of Canadians. Surely to goodness they can pay a little more, Linda. What do you think?
Well, yeah, they can if you say, okay, all your donations you're putting into a political party are no longer something you can write off. All that money you're writing off as a donation that for your kids to go to college or whatever, you cannot write that off. Or you cannot hide your wealth under a corporate umbrella. And, you're living under the corporate umbrella and then you bankrupt that corporate business and then you still walk away with everything you have. They use the laws to keep their wealth. I know there was a study out there one time that said after a certain amount of money, people just feel they are entitled. They begin to say, well, no, I'm entitled. I've earned this. This is mine, regardless of whether they've earned it, all those deductions or not. But that's because when you give them something that you're going to tax them more, they're going to find a way to get under that tax.
Okay, Linda, thank you for your call. Let's take another one. Bellwood, Ontario. Jim is in Bellwood, Ontario. Hi, Jim.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Can I hit you up for a special wealth tax, Tim, to make society more fair?
No.
No.
First of all, the reason number one, all these people that have this money typically run businesses. And if you watch anything in the news as far as attracting business to Ontario or any other province, they will go where the taxes are most reasonable. So if you throw more tax on them, they're just going to go to another province or indeed another country. The other thing, too, is I think Canadians have a really flawed mindset. They think when it's time to help out the less fortunate that we should institute tax. It's always tax, 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 tax. I don't know about you, but I already pay way too much tax in this country. And you know what? The money is there, and I'll give you an example. You don't need to add a tax. So Canada, as we can see in the news as of late, has been neglecting their military and funding their military for decades and decades and decades. Billions and billions underfunded. Okay, so my question to you is: every other country of similar mid-level across the world has, that's involved in NATO, has funded their military. We have not. So my question to you is: with all the taxes that were collected to fund the military, and we haven't done it, what has happened to all that money? All that money's been wasted through poor spending habits and other means within the government. The money is already in there in the taxes we already pay. We have to get rid of improper spending, wastefulness in the government, and probably in all likelihood corruption. You get rid of that and you will have the money to take care of those people in Canada that desperately need it. So that's one example. Another quick example, my uncle owned a mechanical contract business, okay? He got to a certain point, he's doing very well, but he got to a certain point where he had a lot of employees that were making excellent wages. And he was telling me, I'm to the point where if I expand my business any further, I will pay so much tax that it's not worth me hiring more employees and creating more jobs. So he was close to retirement, and he came out with a novel solution. Rather than continuing to expand his business and paying more tax, he ended up retiring and dividing the business between two of his son-in-laws. But that was the only way he could continue because it was so prohibitive with taxes.
Very interesting. Okay, thank you. Some interesting examples there from Bellwood, Ontario. Jim, thank you for your call today. The money's there, he says. It's just not being spent wisely in the way the tax system is working for entrepreneurs right now. If you hit a certain level, you reach a point where it's just not worth it anymore because of the taxes that are in place already. Wealth taxes, wealth inequality, our topic of the day on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you support or are you opposed to higher taxes or special taxes on the wealthy in Canada? In Nova Scotia, Brian is in Nova Scotia. Hello, Brian.
Higher taxes or special.
Yeah, Brian, turn off your radio, Brian. We'll get back to you. Thank you. When you turn off your radio. Let's go back to him. We'll go back to him. Callio in Calgary. Just hang on, Brian. We'll go
How
back
you doing,
to
sir?
Callio. Yeah, very good. How are you? What's your opinion on wealth taxes, special taxes on the wealthy?
So the wealth tax should be fine on the hoarding money, not on the money which is already in the business circle, creating jobs, creating actually that kind of investment money is already helping, because if the rich is not there, so many of the jobs will disappear. So we should not discourage becoming a wealthy person or creating wealth. We should only discourage which is the hoarding money. So somehow the government should find a way that, if the money is not being utilized for so many years, or maybe 1 or 2 years, like in one business cycle or two business cycle, whatever. So on that, there shouldn't be a problem to apply those wealth tax. But here's the problem. Our system is already helping rich people, exploiting the poor. The reason is because the poor people is paying 25% on their credit cards, the same way the rich people are paying the same. So the President Trump, maybe you hate him or love him, but look what he did. He capped interest rate on American Express and all the credit cards for just 1 year, 10%. He said now they're going to charge 10%.
He wants to. He hasn't yet. He's proposing.
He hasn't, but
yeah.
But this is great. These things helps the poor people, because the problem is we exploiting poor on every aspect. On our financial system is exploiting them, charging them the people who need it the most, the money they needed the most. All of these banks, all of this financial system exploit them. They charge them extra. So, for example, if someone needed a house desperately and he wants to buy a house because the current system doesn't support and he has to go for a private lenders, those private lenders exploit him with 10%, 12% interest rate instead of.
Sure.
So my point is, instead of exploiting them, provide them that breaks. The government should make a system where the system should be fair for poor people. It's not something I should pay the same interest rate on the credit cards. The rich people are paying the same, because both people, they cannot afford the same. So affordability differences should be addressed in a way that
the bank would probably say you should probably pay a higher interest rate than a rich person, because you would be riskier than that wealthy person. I think that's what the bank, that's what the bank would say. Okay. I understand. I'd like to circle back sometime to this, hoarding wealth idea that you had, that if I don't somehow deploy the money that I have, then I should be subject to some kind of penalty. I'd like to know a little bit more of your rationale there, but we'll have to move along for now. The news is next.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. Our topic today, wealth inequality, trying to narrow the wealth gap with wealth taxes. Taxes on the rich. Do you support higher taxes or even special taxes on the wealthy in Canada? That's our question today. 1-833-668-2577. Let's try Brian again. in Nova Scotia. See if we can connect there. Hello. Brian. Hi, Brian.
Yes,
good to
sir.
hear
How
from
are
you.
you? Good to hear from you.
Very
too,
good,
sir.
Brian. Yeah, thank you. What's your opinion?
I do not agree with it at all. If nothing else, I think it would be a deterrent from somebody who has good ideas and is willing to take that risk and be successful. It's hard enough to get by as it is, and with all this money that the government sends away from this country, can we focus on that? Can't that be the money? Why should we lose out and another country gain? We have big issues in this country. We have bad, terrible roads, healthcare, you name it. Like Buddy said there from Ontario, I really agree with him. Also,
that there's lots of money coming into Ottawa or even in your province, say into the Treasury in Nova Scotia, but it's just not being dedicated in the right places, doing the most good for people. You think that's the problem, right?
I 100% do. I 100% do, and I don't think you're going to have a good comeback from the wealthy. I think they're going to be scrambling and doing everything they can to get away from it, whether it's to move, take their business elsewhere, or go out of business and just retire off the riches and say, the hell with it all. Why am I paying more when I've done so well for myself, But that's just my opinion.
Well, I appreciate you hanging on there and sharing it with us today, Brian. Thanks for being patient. Back to Calgary we go. Abraham up next. Hi, Abraham.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. What's your opinion?
Obviously, I don't agree with it because even in 2022, I'm in an automotive industry, and they implemented luxury tax on automotive. If you purchase a vehicle over $100,000, you have to pay luxury tax. And the thing is that I just don't see any progress. Even if they're taxing the rich people, I don't see any progress. I've been in Calgary since 2010. Even the luxury taxes that they implemented, I don't see any better roadways. Everything is still the same. The highways that are connected, like let's say the Trans-Canada Highway, there's still 2 lanes. In wintertime, if there's an accident, truck drivers, everybody gets stuck, right? So even though that they implemented this luxury tax, I didn't see anything happening with it. Now, at the same time, I travel every year. I go to Asian countries. I go to Middle East. I go to all these places. And these countries, they barely tax people. And they have better amenities than us. We already, let's forget about the high end that they're thinking about taxing the rich people. The amount of tax that the regular citizens already are paying in Canada is a lot compared to these other countries where they have better healthcare than us, many things than us. And that's why I'm completely against it. I'm like, if those countries can have better things than us, why can't we when we already are paying so much in taxes? We don't even have a railway system that connects from Calgary to a different city in Edmonton. And if we decide to do that, it will take 5 to 10 years just to build that project. In those countries, it happens within 6 months. And then I just don't get it. What is it going to do? Let's say, okay, even the rich says, yes, we're going to pay these taxes. What good is it going to do to the country? I just see that all these money is just going to go in the government's pocket. That's about it.
Well, the promoters would say it's going to raise $120 billion. I'm not saying I'm for it or against it. I'm just outlining what one side says and what the other side says. And the people, like say at Oxfam, for example, are saying a wealth tax that would start at 1% on net worth of $10 million, and then 2% if you hit 50 million, and then 3% if you hit 100 million, would raise $120 billion. $120 billion for the government. And would build more affordable housing. You could maybe fix up the healthcare system. You could do something about the homeless situation. Maybe you build a rail line between Calgary and Edmonton. $120 billion is still a lot of money.
Absolutely, it's a lot of money. But like I said, regardless, even if they're not, regardless if they're going to tax the rich or not, we are already paying a lot in taxes. I'm living in Alberta and I'm complaining about tax where we only pay 5%. Other provinces are paying 7% on top. So imagine how those people are living their day-to-day life, right? People are in Canada are already paying a lot in tax. That's my whole point. And I don't think that they should be implementing any more tax. Whether it's the rich, middle class, low class, I'm completely against it. It's because I've traveled to countries and I've seen them where they're not even taxing their citizens and not even foreigners. They're not even taxing them. And they have better things than us. So that's where my whole point is. I mean, if those countries were not doing as good as
You're
us,
doing a lot
I'd be
of
like,
traveling.
you know what, this
You're doing a
system
lot of traveling. You're seeing a lot of things. You must be rich. Maybe you're just rich.
No, I just own an automotive business and I like to spend my money, right? Like, I don't think that, I should save my money for 10 years later. I'm like, no, if I have the money now, I want to spend it. I'm young, I'm healthy. I want to travel now. I don't want to travel when I'm 50 or 60 years old.
I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing you.
No, I get it.
I appreciate it.
But yeah,
I appreciate it. You know, you mentioned that wealth tax on cars or vehicles over 120,000. They also had a similar tax on boats, right? High-end boats, expensive boats.
I believe so.
They got rid of.
Yeah.
They got rid of the one on boats. Do they still have the one on cars?
The cars one was implemented in 2022. If you buy a car that's over 100,000, you have to pay luxury tax. Let's say the car is 80,000.
And that's still in effect?
Options, it exceeds 100,000, you got to pay luxury tax.
And that's still in effect?
It's still in effect.
Still in effect. Okay, because they're getting rid of the one on boats because it was actually costing more to administer the tax than they ever raised in the tax on boats.
Absolutely. And the roads are still the same. The whole situation of automotive, everything is the same. If anything changed, I would have said, Rob, you know what? This system works. We should continue taxing the rich. But nothing has changed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Very interesting. I like your insight into things. Abraham, you call back anytime. Tax the rich. Tax the rich, the 1% and the rest of us. Do you support higher taxes? Not many supporters today are special taxes on the wealthy. 1-833-668-2577. Hour number 2 of Talkback underway here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Talking about the rich and the rest of us and whether you support higher taxes on the rich. 1-833-668-2577. Jeremy up next in Calgary. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, very good, Jeremy.
That's good.
Taxes on the rich, Jeremy. Soak the rich. Let's raise those taxes. They're rich. They won't even notice, Jeremy. Life will be better for the rest of us.
The people that are making the rules, our government, are the ones that are allowing these loopholes to happen because they use them all the time. Why would they want to stop their money game when this is what they want to do? Like there'd be no reason why they would want to stop their funds, and by taxing the rich, it's them. So clearly it's part of their game, and the reason why they put taxes is because then the rest of us have to do it, and it avoids them completely. Everybody thinks we live in a democracy, but like we're fully oligarchy. The rich run everything about it. We don't vote for anything. They tell us what we get to do. So everybody always says, oh yeah, tax, tax, tax. Well, it just hurts us. It doesn't hurt them, and they'll avoid everything to do that they can do about it.
Okay, so let's take a proposal like they're trying to do in California. Let me run this by you. I ran this by previous callers. Okay, the Thompson family is the wealthiest family in the country, year after year after year. Let's say that the family fortune is $100 billion. Under the California ballot initiative, the Thompsons would have to pay a 5% one-time tax on their net worth. So $50 million. And, you know, we take that money, maybe do something about the homeless encampments, maybe do something about the healthcare system, retirement benefits, whatever. It could be a long list, I suppose. What do you think about a proposal like that? It's not going anywhere?
No, it's not. They will mismanage it. The government will find a way to mismanage it in order to benefit the people that are paying it. So it's already happened. Gavin Newsom already has $42 billion missing from homeless encampment funds that he has zero explanation on. So there's ways that they just avoid doing it, or if they decide to do it, it eventually just trickles down to us. So they're just finding ways in order to make us do the payments on it and pretend that they're teaching or taxing the rich. It isn't going to happen. They'll never deal with it.
It's not going to happen.
It would be ideal,
not
but
going to happen.
They'll find loopholes for the Thompsons. They'll find loopholes for everybody that is filthy rich because it benefits not every politician, but it benefits pretty much all of them, whether it's their donors or they're that wealthy already and they're using the same loopholes.
All right. Thank you. Jeremy to Mia, I believe, is up next. Mia is in Calgary. Hello, Mia.
Hello.
Hi, Mia. What do you think?
Yeah, you had a caller earlier mention inappropriate spending and delegation of funds, that the money's probably already there. They're just not using it correctly. And I had a little bit of feedback to add to that. I worked in the last federal election for the first time, and it was a huge eye-opener running in one of the offices for the month or so before the election. And the amount of waste was astronomical in the funding. Like, they estimated the spend for the last federal election to be around $570 million, which I understand it takes a lot to run a federal election, but there was so many things that could have been improved on. Like, for example, when we finish the election, everything has to be recycled and taken down. And I understand that there's documents that have names and everything has to be dealt with properly, but everything, including boxes of pencils, any piece of paper, any piece of cardboard, had to be all boxed up and couriered back to Ottawa to be shredded there. We have professional shredding companies here that could shred it and save that money and time. And then anything else that we had, like we needed a phone for the office, instead of allowing us to go out and get one at our Canadian Tire, save some funds there. They couriered one from a basement in Quebec from the 1980s that didn't even work. And when it didn't work, they couriered another one from Quebec in French. Like, it was
Good
old,
for the
it was
courier
used,
company.
it didn't work. Oh my God. And then every day after people were allowed to vote, because you could vote in the advanced election from the day they call the vote there.
Sure.
We had to courier our ballots to Ontario every single day. Like, I don't know why we couldn't, hold on to them in our sealed box maybe once a week and send it, but days in advance, every single day, it was couriered. And there is, I think, over 500 offices that were in advance, if not more, across the country. And every one of them is couriering every single day.
So again, to the previous caller's point, you are saying the money is there. There's lots of money there, but what you really have to pay attention to is how are they spending it? Are they spending your money wisely? And maybe if they spent your money more wisely, we wouldn't have to consider things like wealth taxes in order to deal with things like record food bank usage or homeless encampments or the inability of the social welfare system to keep up with the rising cost of living, things like this. Okay, interesting. Thank you. Be right back on Talkback with more of your comments on wealth taxes. Not a lot of takers today. For taxes on the rich. I'm not getting that eat the rich vibe from you. I thought that would be more prevalent, to be honest. 1-833-668-2577. Have your say on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What do you think about higher taxes on the rich in Canada? Higher taxes, wealth taxes, special taxes on the wealthy. Marion in Nova Scotia. Hello, Marion. What do you think, Marion?
I think it's a really bad idea to tax a person's assets. A person's assets could disappear in the blink of an eye. A business could go bankrupt. Stocks could become worthless. A house could burn down. I think it's unfair to tax a resource that could vanish. It's also unfair to deplete savings that a person is counting on to provide disability, disaster, or retirement income. Once you've earned it and paid tax on it, I think it should be yours. Tax should only be levied on income. But that brings me to the topic of income. I think poor people are taxed too much. I looked on the internet to try to find the amount of income that's the poverty line for Canada. I couldn't find that number. The number I found was the low income line, whatever that means.
Low income cutoff, they call it low income cutoff.
Yeah. So for the year 2023, The low-income line for a single person was roughly $30,000. Yet in 2023, a single person started paying federal tax as soon as his income hit $13,500, if my calculations are right. So I'm wondering why. Shouldn't income be tax exempt until it rises beyond the low income line? Now, I agree with your other callers that government needs to cut spending, and I think a great place to start is with the gun buyback program. Canada needs that money to revamp its economy, improve health care, and beef up defenses for itself and NATO and Ukraine. So, no, don't tax assets. And
very articulate as always, Marion. Yeah, that's an eye-popping number for that gun buyback program. Maybe we'll revisit that on Friday. $750 million. Have to tax a lot of rich people, I guess, just to pay for that. Zach in Calgary. Hi, Zach.
Hi, Rob. It's good to hear from you.
Zach. Yeah, it's good to hear from you, Zach, on the special wealth taxes. What's your opinion?
Well, full disclosure, I'm an automotive technician supporting a young family on a single income. So I'm rich by global standards in the 1%, but I'm definitely not rich in Canada. I'm not really an eat the rich type of guy, but I am very sympathetic to my fellow millennials who are frustrated with a certain group of the wealthy in this country. I was personally a little insulted watching our finance minister using his money to buy $400 shoes for telling us how much money they're going to take from us. It was one of the kind of a little snobby, if you ask me. But I'm not totally convinced that taxing the quote unquote rich is going to dig us out of this hole. Like you said, they have an army of lawyers that will find every tax loophole to escape and increase, or they'll just move.
Okay, Zach, thank you. And glad you're doing well. 1-833, let's stop here. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. And have your say. Taxes on the rich, special taxes on the wealthy, surtaxes, inheritance taxes, taxes on other assets like expensive vehicles, like yachts, mansions. What do you think about wealth taxes? Very popular. You know why they're popular? Because most of us are not rich. That's why they're popular. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The proponents of wealth taxes, and this is the case that Oxfam makes in its report this week to coincide with the gathering of the rich and the powerful, the World Economic Forum in Davos, is look at all the need out there. Look at all the need out there in Canada. How many times over the years have we talked about things like record food bank usage or the growing number of homeless encampments? For years, poverty rates in Canada were on the decline, but they're rising again. How many stories have there been about the lack of affordable housing, sky-high rents, people struggling to keep up with the rising cost of living, people having a hard time putting healthy food on the table, the inadequate rates for social welfare from provincial governments where the poorest of the poor are expected to get by on, say, $1,500 a month, sometimes even less than that. First Nations that don't have clean drinking water, the disabled. And then look at the budgets of governments, not just the federal budget, all the budgets, the provincial government budgets and the municipal budgets, they're all deep in the red. And think of the strain on the social programs in Canada, the social safety net, the healthcare system that seems to be in trouble, the public education system, mental health care. And they say the rich, they just keep on getting richer. The wealthiest 40 people in Canada, wealth climbed by almost $100 billion in 1 year. The CEO of big Canadian companies, average pay package $16 million, according to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, 250 times what the average worker in Canada is earning, $7,800 an hour. making the same money in 8 hours as an average worker makes all year. This is the case that is made. This is obscene. This is unfair. The rich have so much. They won't even miss it. They'll barely even notice it's gone. So a wealth tax is what this country needs for the collective good of the country. Think of the health care it could provide, the teachers it could hire, the child care spaces that could be created, the homeless who could be housed, increases to monthly social welfare payments. They're not paying their fair share. The rally cry goes, they have to pay more. They've done well. They can afford to give us a little bit more. And then life would be better for everyone else. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. It's a tough sell today, I will say, with this crowd. Bill in Calgary. Hi, Bill.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome, Bill. What's your opinion?
Well, firstly, most of your listeners are correct. There is very little fiscal responsibility in our governments. That's why a lot of intelligent governments like Germany, Switzerland, Holland have anchored in their constitution, which is very hard to change, a limit of the deficit that they can run. It's a very tight limit. They're not allowed to run a deficit unless there's an emergency like COVID. And even then, they have a fixed period in which that has to be paid back. So they run it more like a business, like it should be. As to the wealth tax, Switzerland has, it varies from province to province, and there are a lot of them, there are 36. But in my hometown in Basel, the city, it's between 4 and 8 per mil, and that's forever. You know, as most of the very large wealth of in any country, if you look at the some of the top millionaires and billionaires, a very large percentage have inherited their money, and they didn't work for it. Some have inherited it, like Mr. Trump and his son-in-law, and built up. Fine. They will pass it on to their offspring. So, I mean, in Switzerland, they have something like $470 billion of private wealth, with companies like the company, families like the family that owns IKEA. They're very wealthy. They live in Switzerland for tax reasons. But, 4 per mil is for a billionaire, a multimillionaire, chump change. And in my hometown in Basel, it's starts at one Swiss franc, right? So if you have 100,000 that they say you have, like a car or something like that, because not many people have houses, it's 4 per mil per year forever. But as it's not really painful, people don't mind.
So how it's being promoted in this country is, let's say someone's done really well. I've mentioned this to our callers in the past. Someone's done well. They've accumulated a net worth, their real estate, their investments, whatever the case might be. And they have a net worth of $10 million. They should have to pay an annual tax of 1%, an annual extra tax of 1%, in addition to all the other taxes they pay. An extra $100,000. Are you in favor of that or not?
I think it should be lower because, yeah, well, I mean, as I said, in Basel, it's between 4 and 8 per mil.
Okay.
And
so let's cut it in half and say it's 0.5. Instead of $100,000, it's $50,000.
Yeah.
You'd be okay with that? You'd be okay with that?
I would be okay with that, yeah.
You'd be okay with that. Okay, Bill. Thank you for a global perspective and the European view. Be right back on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Where do you stand on wealth taxes? Higher taxes or special taxes on wealthy Canadians? That's what we've been asking today. Andy is in Cambridge, Ontario. Hello, Andy.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Andy. What's your opinion?
We have a bit of an issue as a self-interested species that is never going to change, and that's an example is people get really excited when house prices go up, but the buyers don't. The sellers do. So you've got two opposite groups, and I don't know about you, but I'm not thrilled when I hear that the price of oil has gone up, and it means it's going to cost me more to fill up my gas tank. So it depends on which side you're on, the buyer or the seller, or the millionaire that doesn't want to pay taxes, and the other guy the poorer guy that wants him to pay more taxes. It's an endless conflict and problem.
Okay. But what about the what you're hearing from the proponents? Look, if the rich only paid a little bit more, think of all the problems we could solve in this country. What do you think of that argument?
I think not being one of the 1% people, I'm all for that, but I'm sure they're not. So
Right.
it's a problem. You know, it's with no solution.
The problem with no solution. Okay, interesting thoughts. Yeah, you know, I think you're bang on something, and I thank you for your call today. The reason why this is popular with some people, not with a lot of our callers today, is because most of us are not rich. I mentioned this earlier. You know, go after the rich people. I'm tapped out. As long as you're not coming for me, what do I care if you go after the rich? Yeah, tax Elon Musk, tax Galen Weston. Sure, go ahead. Yeah, they're rich. I'm not rich. Doesn't affect me. Maybe it would do some good. You know, to Andy's point, there is a self-interest component to all of this, but there's a whole other side to the tax. The rich squeeze some more out of the rich that, you know, we can get into, because people who watch economics say sometimes it's not all it's cracked up to be. Pan in Calgary. Pan. Hi, Pan.
Hi, Rob.
Hi there. What's your opinion?
Oh, I just want to talk about taxes in Canada. We Canadians are taxed to death. Canada, as we all know, is a highly taxed country. And as I said, Canadians, working Canadians, whether retired or working, we are being taxed way too much. Whereas the leaders, this country, have, well, I'm sure, I can't say I'm sure, but they're getting away with tax. Carney himself, he has assets stashed away in offshore tax savings. So I'm pretty sure he's avoiding tax himself. But it's not fair. Leaders like them, even Trudeau, you know, I'm sure they have all their millions stashed away in offshore tax savings, while we Canadians
I have no idea. I have no idea about that. Okay.
No,
okay. I don't know. You don't know. It's a suspicion you have. I just want to get it out there. We have no evidence of that. No evidence of it. Okay. So do you think, would you say we should do something? Because this is another one of the recommendations, say, from Oxfam, is you have to do something about the ability of wealthy people to move money offshore. Would you support a measure to that effect?
Well, I don't know much about that, but I'm just a hardworking Canadian, and 40% of our earnings go to pay tax. And the government has been abusing taxpayers' money. Connie's been jetting, flying around all over the world. He's a net zero green energy, his net zero and green energy agenda. But it doesn't make sense. He's jetting all over the world, flying government jet, burning fossil fuel, and there he is. He's against, fossil fuel. It just does not make sense. I just had to have my say. That's all.
Sure. I'm glad you did. It sounds like you are one of, and several callers have mentioned this. How about lower taxes for everyone? Not just the rich, but maybe lower taxes for everyone. But Oxfam said you have to do something about tax havens. It says primarily wealthy Canadians have stashed $600 billion offshore. You bring some of that money home, maybe you raise billions of dollars in revenue for the government. Makes life better for everyone else. That's the claim. Be right back with more of your calls on Talkback on wealth taxes today on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Tax the rich or not? What's your opinion on higher wealth taxes? Terry in Calgary. Hi, Terry. Up next.
Hi, how are you today?
Yeah, very good, Terry. What's your opinion?
My opinion, I've got quite a bit of opinions on this. As far as going after the few that are very rich, you have to realize they worked hard for that money and whatnot. And the time to tax the rich is to tax their corporations and their companies. We, unfortunately, in Alberta, we don't need the money because we only have a 5% corporate tax. Saskatchewan has a 30% corporate tax. So shame on us. We don't need the money. That's my opinion, that if they'd raise the taxes on the corporations and make them pay their fair share, after all, with the oil, the only way Albertans get anything back on their oil is through the taxes. There isn't much other. So I'm all for corporate tax, paying more money, and let the people who work hard for their money keep their money. Tax them while they're still working in the corporations. The corporations are the ones that are stealing all the resources for very little return. So we've been pumping oil for over 100 years, and they tell us we're broke. Come on, there's something going on there, isn't there?
All right. Higher corporate taxes. Yeah, sure. Okay. Sorry to interrupt, Terry. Continue.
One other point I'd like to make is that back then when Ralph Klein told us that we didn't have to pay for health care, the reason he didn't want us to pay for health care is so that we wouldn't have anything to say about it when they got rid of all the health boards and continued to destroy our health care system.
Okay, well, that's a little off the topic. I think that's a little off the topic, and I want to fit in one more call. We'll fit in one more call. I think you were wandering too far astray there, Terry. Higher corporate taxes as opposed to higher wealth taxes on individuals, though. Gotcha. In Cambridge, Sharif in Cambridge. Hi, Sharif.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Sharif. What's your opinion?
Thank you, Rob, for the opportunity, to take my call. Can you hear me?
My pleasure. Yeah, I hear you just fine, Sharif. What's your opinion?
So, I think, Rob, it's not a good idea that if we tax the rich, so they're gonna make poor and middle class life miserable because they're gonna raise the price of their item or their property or even Jack Bezos, whatever. They're gonna raise the price. It's gonna get harder, but there's a lot of stuff that we can manage it. I give you an example. Can you give an example?
Sure.
Let me ask you a question. Why politicians getting so much high salary? There's a lot of people, they can do their job. For example, a mayor or somebody work for the city. They make so much money. I give you an example. I drive bus. I take public. I'm making $20 to $21. A city bus driver making $35 an hour. How fair it is? my job is harder than their job, right? I'll give an example. Why a dentist making to do a root canal, they charge you $2,000. So this is not fair. Things can get changed if government really care. But politician, government, they don't care about people because they come from rich family. Why they should care about me and you and taxpayer? So as I said, if you raise the taxpayer,
yeah, I'm not sure if they come. I'm not sure if all that's a sweeping generalization. I'm not sure if all politicians come from rich families. Pierre Poilievre, for example, doesn't come from a wealthy family. Mark Carney, the prime minister, he doesn't come from a wealthy family. His father was a teacher in northern Canada. Some of them have. Some of them have come from money. Pierre Trudeau, his family had money. Paul Martin, of course, probably the wealthiest prime minister we've ever had. Quite wealthy. But interesting discussion today. Not a lot of takers on new wealth taxes. I think that was the consensus today. Brand new topic tomorrow. More of your calls and always the latest breaking news here on News Radio.